Welcome to Fireside Nets with Spen and Nick, your number one Nets podcast for news, information, reactions, breakdowns, and so much more. Nick, it is episode 199. That's right. We are approaching the 200 episode milestone for Fireside Nets. What do you think about that?
Realistically, how many episodes do you think I've co-hosted?
I would say 65 to 70%.
Okay. I think you're going to say 60 to 75. I was going to say like 150. Which, what 150 would be 75%.
I don't know, though. That's high. I would say 60 to 65%.
Okay. So you'd say like 120, 130.
Yeah, because Pete hosted a ton, and then there are a few solo ups I've done, and we've had a few guest hosts. So
I think 102 was my favorite.
Are you being serious? You just shouted out
Everyone listen to 102, all right? Go back and let me know what you think.
So it's been a while since we last recorded. I think our last episode was exactly a month ago. And then before that, it was 2-3 weeks ago. And, as of last month, we were the number two Nets podcast on feedspot.com. And I guess if you don't record for a month, they take you off the list. So now we're not even in the top 10.
Well, I'm still number 2 on feetspot.com.
Oh, feetspot.com. I did see that. I don't mind. Listen, pressure's off. We can just do our podcast freely. We don't have to worry about, our ranking or keeping our place in the rankings. I'm not too mad about it.
I don't think rankings matter unless the higher ranked, the more money you get, because then it would really matter.
That's a great point. But yeah, so shout out to FeedSpot. It was cool to be ranked top 10 for a while, but we haven't put an episode out in the month. It makes sense. We've been busy. I've been busy. He's been busy, but that's no excuse. We're back.
There's been USA basketball on. There's been USA soccer on, the women's team. I just watched them crush Zambia 3-0. Shout out to the USA women's Olympic soccer team. And I want to bring up this really quickly because I just read this. Did you see the whole Canadian women's soccer team drone spying thing?
I did see that. This is a Brooklyn Nets basketball podcast, so I did not have that on the docket. But is there anything you wanted to say about that specific situation?
I just found it hilarious. It's hilarious. The Canadian women's soccer team, I believe they're ranked 8th in the world. They're the reigning gold medal champions. We're sending drones to New Zealand, ranked 28th in the world, have won 2 matches in the last decade or something crazy, or the past 2 Olympic competitions, even probably more than that. We were spying on them with drones, had to fire 2 staffers, and I believe the coach is suspended today. They already won. They won 2-1, I believe, against New Zealand. But I just found it to be extremely hilarious that in Paris 2024 Olympic competition, the Canadian women's soccer team is sending drones over to the New Zealand practice.
Yeah, I mean, my response to that is Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time, and people will always follow the Patriot way, which is cheating. And the next thing you know, the Canadian national team is going to be deflating the soccer ball.
I would not be surprised at all. We actually, and I know avid listeners of this podcast know I run a sketch group called I Mostly Blame Myself, a sketch comedy group that's at our first ever touring show in Boston. And we actually were able to sneak in a Deflategate joke into one of our sketches. So I thought you would appreciate that, Spen. You will not see that joke on Sunday at our show in New York, July 28th, 7 p.m. at the Players Theater, because we are no longer in Boston. We did a Boston-specific Deflategate joke.
Okay. Shout out to Deflategate. Shout out to Patriots for always cheating. And shout out to I Mostly Blame Myself, Nick's comedy sketch show. So it's been 4 minutes. We are into the podcast. We have not talked about the Nets at all. Let's get into it. And we'll start with the Nets Summer League recap. We don't have to get into the game specifics. I know the Nets won a few more games than they lost. I know they lost to the Clippers, and they beat the Pacers. They beat the Knicks, and I'm missing one other team they beat. But let's focus on the individuals who participated in Summer League, and we'll start with the guys whose stock after Summer League are trending up. And we have to start with Jalen Wilson, the Summer League MVP. Nick, that's right. A Brooklyn Net was the most valuable player in some type of basketball associated adjacent, not the NBA, but still, that's pretty darn good, Nick. Jalen Wilson averaged 21.8 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game, 1 assist, and a little under a steal a game. He was dominant. I mean, the three-point stroke was there. He hit a game-winning shot, and it was one of those like tough through the lane, sort of like a hook shot layup that he hit. But he was phenomenal. And, shout out to the second-round pick out of Kansas last year. Clearly, he's been working on his game this offseason. It showed. He was quoted saying that the game has slowed down for him a little bit, but he is definitely a guy that we should keep our eyes out for in 2024, 2025.
I'm excited. I mean, that's huge. Like you said, this is a feeder league into the NBA, right? But it's like the G League. The Summer League is legit. We're scouting out real talent. I don't know what the exact percentages, but a small fraction of this league is going to go up into the NBA, probably a bigger fraction than people assume. So for him to be the number one out of those players, that's exciting, especially in a dark time as a Brooklyn Nets fan, when we do not know who is going to be on our team come the start of the season and who's going to step up. And I mentioned this whenever I was on last, must have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is what's going to accelerate. This is what's going to accelerate our path to success, right? We are going to have to bring in a few veterans. We're going to have to bring in a few hard hitters. But what we need is the Oklahoma City Thunder effect, where a couple guys you were not expecting to be great all of a sudden come out of the woodwork and start to play at an elite level. Now, I know I always bring up the SGA example. SGA had higher expectations than other rookies and other recruits, and nobody expected him this quickly to be in the MVP contention, shooting over 50%, averaging 30 points a game. So that's obviously the best possible case scenario. But to have someone like Jalen Wilson show some sort of potential, some sort of fight and hunger and excellence, if you will, if he can even mimic half of those numbers, right? If we're looking at a guy who's averaging 10 points a game as the 4th, 5th, 6th guy, that's huge for a team that needs those types of role players especially. So nothing but positive things there. I do wish the Nets went a little further in the Summer League. I believe the Heat won over the Grizzlies in the championship there, but great to see a player on our team stand out, even if it didn't result in some sort of competition victory.
Yeah, I don't know if the Nets were eliminated. I don't know if there was a championship in that bracket, so I'm just not sure because I think they only lost 1 or 2 games. But regardless, Jalen Wilson, he's 6'8", and he's an NBA player. Like, there were questions about him, 23 years old, spent, I think, 4 years at Kansas. He's 23 years old now, but he wasn't like a, oh my God, look at this prospect type of player. He dropped, he fell in the second round to us, and I'm very excited. He, out of the 3 guys, him, Noah Clowney, and Dariq Whitehead, those were the 3 draft picks from last year. He looked the best in this summer league by far. I can't think of a comparison in the NBA yet because his game right now, it's really a lot of 3-pointers and a lot of driving. There's not a mid-range game yet. So I got to see that mid-range game off the dribble. But I'm excited to continue to watch this guy get better and better and better.
Crazy first comparison that comes to mind, and tell me if I'm completely off here. Sean Marion.
No, well, Sean Marion didn't have a 3.
Sean Marion, he had an ugly shot.
Bro, Jalen Wilson's shot is not only pretty, he got so hot in one of the games. He hit like 3 threes in a row, and the announcer literally was like, I didn't know Steph Curry was playing in the summer league.
Okay. I'm looking at Sean Marion's 3-point statistics.
Like Michael Redd comes to mind, but like he's much taller than Michael Redd. Like that kind of player. What I saw in Jalen Wilson in the summer league that we haven't seen yet in the NBA is he can get hot. And if he gets hot,
Malik
Monk's not a bad comparison. I think he's 6'6", 6'5". Those kinds of guys. I'm talking about the microwave players. So shout out to Jalen Wilson. Really, really excited for him and his growth as he continues his NBA career. And then the second guy who's trending up, we got to mention Noah Clowney. Clowney, his 3-point stroke, it looks like he's continuing to work on that. He hit a few threes in the summer league. He's a menace on defense, menace on the boards, had a few nice slams around the rim. He still needs to work on his overall offensive fit. I didn't see the aggression I would have liked to see from him in this summer league. I want him to be more aggressive on offense, and he's got to figure out a mid-range game. Like, that's the one thing I haven't seen from any of these young guys is, hey, mid-range off the dribble, you're open 10 to 12 feet, just shoot it. And Clowney was getting the ball, not in the post, but he was getting the ball on the elbow, 3-point line extended. That's where he was really working. So he had a nice summer league. He's still just 20 years old, 6'10". He'll continue to get better. But he was the second guy.
2004. How old were you in 2004?
11.
That's when Clowney was born. And now he's playing in the Professional Basketball Association. The National Basketball Association.
What did you say?
The Professional Basketball.
National. It's a professional
basketball association.
It is. You're not wrong.
That's just bonkers to me. We, over the years of doing this podcast, and just as Nets fans, talk so much about the ups and downs of Nick Claxton's growth. And Nick Claxton has grown insanely at a over 4, 5, 6 years, Claxton now? And he's in a position where he's a permanent Nets guy. He is our center. He's kind of like the Brook Lopez of those earlier years, or the first couple of years, the Brooklyn Nets. Not the shooter Lopez's, but just in terms of kind of like the staple of this Brooklyn Nets team. He's the biggest guy. We want him on the court. He's a great rim defender. But what I will say about Claxton is sometimes his growth was moving at a slower pace than we had anticipated. We had kind of been hoping when those first 2 or 3 years, he'd start averaging a double-double. He'd be more of a dominant force. He put on some weight. And I'm still happy with where he is now. And I love Claxton. I mean, we're attached or we're loyal with this guy at this point. But if Clowney could make a jump a little quicker, right, in his skill set, in his confidence, in his ability, I still think him and Claxton need to put on some weight. I mean, you look at these big guys, even Anthony Davis, when he came into the league, who was so scrawny and kind of filled out and has those huge traps now, like you need that if you want to dominate more, especially in today's league where a lot of the big men are chucking threes and coming out and being able to do both like Jokic does so well. So super excited about Clowney, but I would love to see over the next 2 or 3 years, maybe a faster acceleration than we saw with Claxton in terms of maturity and level.
I think that's fair. I think that what Jordi Fernandez's plan should be is to play them together. Have Clowney start at the 4. He can stretch the floor. Have Claxton be the 5, and let those two guys just absolutely impose their will against offenses, right? Because both those guys are shot blockers. So if you have both those guys on the court at all times, it's going to be very hard for teams to get to the rim and finish. That would just be my thought process.
And I don't want to, and you know me, I love Nick Claxton, and I know people are going to always defend Clax. You look at his numbers, right? I have them in front of me. 2019, 4-3, then 7-5, then 9-6, then kind of made that big jump in 22-23 season, 13-9, and then this current past season, 24, 12-10. I mean, it's there. They're gradually rising, but there is kind of a next threshold, I think, to be an elite big man that you kind of be in that 20-12 range is where we ideally like a guy like that. For sure. And I think, you talked about everything with Claxton, but you didn't mention like his offensive game is very limited. And I think that we get very excited when we see he has the ball one-on-one with a center and he puts on a move and scores. And we all marvel at that because it's not the norm. It's something that happens quite infrequently. So you'd like to see that become the norm, right? Alfred Şengün over in Houston, he hits a hook shot and everyone's just like, oh, that's standard. That's what he does. You'd like to see that more consistent offensive bag from Claxton on a nightly basis. Agreed. All right. And then the only other guy who's trending up I wanted to mention, Keon Johnson. Keon Johnson was with the Nets for a little bit, and he was so good in the summer league this season. He played his way into a two-way standard contract with Brooklyn. In the summer league, at one point, he was averaging 16.3 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, and 5.8 assists through 4 games in summer league. He can hit the 3. He's extremely athletic. He's 6'5", and he's only 22 years old, Nick. This is a guy that has not found his spot in the NBA, but if he's going to figure it out anywhere, it is going to be with the Brooklyn Nets during this rebuilding season. I mean, that's what this summer league, and that's what having young guys and rotating players is for, is kind of discovering players that you never really thought would come into their own or find a spot in a specific team. I always reference the Thunder, but I think of a guy like Lou Dort, who literally before the Thunder was like, this guy doesn't even need to be in the NBA. What is he, just a lockdown defender? And now he's literally SGA's right-hand man. When SGA gets double teamed, Lou Dort hits that 3 and he locks down the best player on the other team. So these are the types of players that if we can see them come into their own, if they could find a spot in this rotation, that does excite me as a Nets fan. A Cam Thomas type. If Cam Thomas come up is kind of the biggest offensive a surprise and pleasant surprise at that you could find, especially on this lowly Nets team. So that stuff excites me with all these players kind of showing a little bit of what they could do.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think Cam Thomas was the Summer League MVP as well, his rookie season. I could be wrong there. Don't hold me to that, but he might have been. And I know we were talking about Keon Johnson, but you brought up Cam Thomas. So a lot of Cams, a lot of Johnsons.
There's Cams, there's Johnsons.
Let's talk about Tennessee. What'd you say?
Keon Johnson went to the University of Tennessee. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's nice, man. I think that Nets fans are going to like him the more time he gets. Again, hungry young player. Those are the types of guys that Sean Marks is going after. In terms of trending down, there was one player that did not have a great summer league, and that was Dariq Whitehead. And to give you some perspective, our guys over at Netcast on July 21st, they tweeted his summer league statistics, Dariq Whitehead's. 4 games played, 5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game. His shooting percentage from the field, 15%. His shooting percentage from three-point range, 8%.
Yikes.
Listen, and
19 years old.
Dariq Whitehead did respond. I'll read his response in a bit, but you gotta understand, this guy has had major leg surgery twice in the last several years. He barely played his rookie year. He was coming off a serious injury and then finished the year with a serious injury. So he rightfully tweeted to defend himself, been injured for about 2 years, and y'all expect it to come back in a week. Laughing face emoji. Glad I was able to get through 4 games this week. 2 exclamation points emoji.
That's a fair response. I mean, nobody knows the grueling process of coming back from an injury more than I do. And it's hard to come back, especially to come back. And it's even as much of a mental game as it is a physical one. And you look what happened to Derrick Rose, right? You look what happened to KD kind of came back and was totally fine. Well, you look what happened to a lot of players coming back from injury, and it takes them a while to get their head right. Ben Simmons still hasn't gotten his head or his back right in like 9 years. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. It is the summer league. It is almost a warm-up, if you will. But it's tough to get that criticism, especially when you are, a 5-star recruit. What a Duke. Like it's tough to come in with high expectations, first-round pick, and to not only come close to hitting them, but to kind of shit the bed a little bit. So still some faith.
Yeah, I'll say this. Like, out of those 3 guys that we drafted last year, Clowney, Whitehead, and Jalen Wilson, nobody had more hype than Dariq Whitehead after the pick was made. I mean, he shot damn near 43% from three-point range at Duke. He was one of the highest-rated recruits in his class, but obviously at Duke, he missed time. He had the leg injuries, and then last season, they had to shut him down because of left shin stress reaction. That's what he had, a left shin stress reaction in January, and he missed the majority of the year. So he's going to have plenty of opportunities in this upcoming season to prove that this summer league was just rust, right? Because let's call it that. He hasn't played consistent basketball in a while. The shots he was taking, they weren't bad shots. He was just missing them. If he was a 43% three-point shooter in college, you're hoping that some of that can come back, and also some of his athleticism that we saw before college when he was in high school, that can come back as well, because he was a monster athletically coming out of high school.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, we're going to have hits. We're going to have misses. Some of these players are going to exceed. Some of them are going to underperform. It's something we got to live with. But from a player standpoint, 19 years old, getting that hate and answering back, honestly, I respect that.
All right, Nick, we have a few segments, and they're basically just news segments until we get to Nets trivia later, which I know you're excited for. First segment is Welcome to the Nets. Adrian Wojnarowski reported on July 19th, the Memphis Grizzlies traded forward Zaire Williams and a 2030 second-round pick via Dallas to the Brooklyn Nets for Mamadi Diakite. Sources tell ESPN Zaire Williams was the 10th pick in the 2021 draft. So this is Nick, a 6'8" forward. He fits the timeline for our tanking season. He's just 22 years old, and he's another guy who's going to get a ton of time this season, right? If there's something there, he could be part of the future. If there's not something there, you move on. Thoughts on this trade?
Hey, I'm looking at his numbers, 8-4 last year in Memphis. Young dude, like you said, I like the build on this guy. 6'9". Looks like he could move as well. 10th round pick in 2021. Sorry, 10th overall pick in 2021. That's cool to me. That's an exciting pick. I do remember actually watching him on the Grizzlies too, and he just kept getting more and more time and gaining more confidence and getting more trust with the ball in his hands. So I like that. I think that's a cool move. This is cool to just see a bunch of young guys come into the roster that, for better or worse, had potential, and you're not sure whether or not they're going to live up to it. But it's kind of like a game of Russian roulette, right? Throw like 6 of these 5-star out of high school recruits into the fire and see who comes out. But I like that. I like Zaire Williams. Nothing but positive thoughts on my end.
And I don't want to fool Nets fans. Just because me and Nick are excited about a few of these players that are going to get opportunities with the team, it does not mean we think this team is going to win. Okay, I saw Doug Norrie, host of the Locked On Nets podcast. He joined the Bad Weather Fans podcast a week or two ago, and he talked about how bad the Nets are going to be this season. Talent-wise, they're probably the worst team in the NBA, right? They have individual guys who would be great with other teams, but collectively, this is just not a good team right now. We'll talk a little bit about Cam Thomas and Dennis Schroeder and those guys later, but yeah, I just don't want people to get excited and expect because we're pumped about Zaire Williams and Jalen Wilson and these young guys. We don't think that this is going to result in victories for the Brooklyn Nets.
No, everyone listening should be fucking pumped. This is the squad. Let's get into that like Jets delusional territory where we have like a bunch of average young guys and we're just like, we're winning. No, sorry, not even Jets. I like the Jets. This is Knicks territory. This is like, dude, we just got Josh Hart. We're winning the ship easily, bro. Like Mitch Robinson just dunked the ball. It's over. Did you guys see Miles McBride hit that 3? And then we still lost by 20. It doesn't matter. We're winning the championship. So that's us now. Zaire Williams, Dariq Whitehead, Jalen Wilson, Elite 3. We'll see you in June. You. I do want to say, Spen, since we're talking about like Summer League and G League and kind of developing players, I want to pour one out for the G League career of Ryan Terrell. He was the first Orthodox Jewish basketball player in the G League. He was on the Motor Cruise Pistons or the Motor Cruise, Detroit Motor Cruise, whatever the Detroit Pistons G League team was, Grand Rapids Motor Cruise, something like that. And he, after a few years in the G League, after being a star at Yeshiva University, where he led them to the longest winning streak in collegiate basketball history, has signed a contract with, I'm going to forget the name now. It's an Israeli basketball team, Irona, Nes Ziona or something. It is an Israeli basketball team. He probably got a much bigger contract and is making a lot more money than he would have staying in the G League. But that does kind of mean that he's putting his NBA hopes on hold and his NBA dreams of being the first Orthodox Jewish basketball player in the National Basketball Association. So really cool really proud and blown away by what Ryan Terrell has accomplished. But I do want to say it is a little bit disappointing that he is leaving his NBA hopes right now to go play club internationally.
He is 25 years old, so never say never. I mean, he could absolutely come play in the NBA in years to come. Nick, we do have some breaking news. Do you have any sound effects for breaking news? That's pretty good. The Nets are signing former Detroit Pistons point guard Killian Hayes.
Ryan Terrell.
Killian Hayes to a 1-year deal per Shams Charania. So the former number 7th pick, who was a disappointment in Detroit, comes to Brooklyn to try to, I guess, resurrect his career. What are our thoughts on Killian Hayes? And by the way, we now have Ben Simmons, Dennis Schroeder, and Killian Hayes as our point guards. What are your thoughts?
You know, I was just going with this whole mindset of like all these young guys, but now this seems like overkill, if I'm being honest. Like you had me with Zaire Williams. I was like, yeah, now you're kind of losing me when you say Killian Hayes. I watched Killian Hayes play on the Pistons last year, which was arguably the worst team in the NBA, one of the worst teams I've seen in basketball in a while. And he was not a hotspot for that team. He performed well below expectations, and to not even be a shining light in a real pit of darkness in Detroit is a little concerning. But hey, man, never say never. I guess this episode is called Never Say Never because we're taking in all your trash and we're going to turn one of them into gold. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, Killian Hayes is just 22 years old. He's
Stop
a young
saying
guy.
that. Stop saying that. When they're like 19, 20, 21, even 22, but like you're looking at like a 25, 26-year-old guy, you're like, hey, you start to lose me. But yeah, excited.
Yeah, man, I think our entire roster could be like seniors in college, essentially. Minus like 3 or 4 guys.
And let's be real. We're going to pick up a lot of guys. We're going to drop a lot of guys. We might even be building up for some big trade where we pick up a lot of low-hanging fruit and are able to get some sort of top of the tree snack. But Killian Hayes does not stir my pot at all, if I'm being completely H with you. But again, I love new chapters. I love new opportunities. Throw a Brooklyn Nets jersey on the guy, and he might play. He might do a complete 360 from what you saw last year. So you never know. Never say never.
Killian's father, Deron Hayes, actually played basketball professionally. Interestingly enough.
To quote my favorite movie title, "Never Back Down."
Okay, I'm kind of the same way on the Killian Hayes signing. Does nothing for me. I just want to see what happens with Ben Simmons at this point.
I know. I just really need him to quote my favorite movie title, "Step Up."
Step up. All right. So welcome to the Nets, Zaire Williams. Welcome to the Nets, Killian Hayes. Goodbye, Mamadi Diakite. He was on the team for less than a month in the offseason. So I hope he enjoyed his time as a Net. But
I do want to say welcome Zaire Williams and who was the one you just said?
Killian Hayes.
Killian Hayes with my favorite movie title, Daddy's Home 2.
Daddy's Home 2. Yeah. All right. So we said goodbye to Mamadi Diakite. This next segment is called Thank You for Your Service, Mikal Bridges. So I'm going to be honest with you.
A quote just came out that said we couldn't figure it out.
I'm going to be honest, Nick. I was a bit tough on Mikal after the trade, and rightfully so, based on everything that came out about him wanting to be in New York. But I did hear another quote. He was on Paul George's terrible podcast recently, and he spoke about Playoff P. He spoke about being in that scorer zone for a bit. And when he got going, he was putting up 30 burgers, and he said, the home crowd would rally behind him, and he would kind of just black out. I'm paraphrasing here. But he kind of non-directly complimented the Nets crowd. And it was nice to hear, even through all the bullshit and through his playing footsie with the Knicks, that he at least appreciated our home crowd. That was refreshing to hear.
So you hate on Mikal Bridges, like vehemently, like calling him.
I don't think that's how you pronounce that, but go on.
Vehemently. I think you might have said something along the lines of it might be more of a hated player than Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn.
Genuinely with the public. Yes, that's correct. And still probably accurate.
And then he compliments our fan base and you immediately retract your negativity.
Time out. I'm not retracting my negativity. I will say that I'm easing up on him a little bit. And I'm thanking him for his service. I did not thank him for his service to the Brooklyn Nets. I'm thanking him. And when I talk about service, I'm not talking about serving in the military. I'm talking about playing basketball for my basketball team. I just wanted to specify.
I don't think anybody was assuming that Mikal Bridges was traded to the Knicks, then took some time off to serve in the military and defend Donald Trump during that assassination attempt.
I just wanted to make sure.
He's not David Robinson. He's not the Admiral who earned that name in the Navy.
Yeah, he's just the Iron Man because he doesn't miss games. But that has nothing to do with Tony Stark or MCU. Anyway, all right.
His last name is Bridges, but he's actually never been on a bridge before.
I'd also like to thank him because of the haul we got back. I never really thanked him for playing well enough for us that New York just overpaid a fuck ton and gave us all these picks. So thank you for that. Thank you for complimenting the Nets fans. I still fucking hate you.
And thank you for averaging just over 20 points a game so I could give you the nickname of my favorite Chadwick Boseman movie, 21 Bridges.
Have you seen that? I haven't.
I have not.
Oh, so it's not your favorite movie.
I had a bit going and you kind of just ruined it.
All right, so this next segment, it's called Who Wants an Aging Small Forward? I got an aging small forward here for sale.
Let's workshop that name.
The Kings, the Lakers, and the Magic are all interested in the services of small forward / power forward Cameron Johnson.
Stop saying services.
For Brian Lewis of the New York Post. The Spurs, the Raptors, and the Warriors could be a dark horse team as well. Nick, is there any ounce of you that wants to see Cam Johnson start on the Nets this year? Or are we just completely done with him now that his best friend is in Manhattan?
I mean, how could I be excited about Cam Johnson when you're getting me amped about all these young guys who are a couple of years younger and seem to have a way more potential? Again, like we've went in circles with this at length, but Cam Johnson was a guy who was a fun seventh man to watch for the Phoenix Suns because he would occasionally come in and kind of have like a little bit of a, I don't know, Jason Capono, Steve Novak effect where he'd hit some open threes and you get really pumped that there's someone on your bench who wasn't terrible. And then you put him in a starting role and you make him kind of the third or fourth go-to scorer on your team and he crumbles. And we're sitting here surprised that we tried to elevate Mikal Bridges from a 3 to a 1 and Cam Johnson from a 7 to a 3.
I think he was the sixth man on that team, by the way. He was the first guy off the bench.
Sure. I think it might have been Cam Payne.
Maybe. It wasn't Mamadi Diakite.
It was not. My point is we threw these guys into shoes that were way too big for them to fill. You get rid of KD and Kyrie, and you bring in Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and expect them to light a fire. Like they're not even going to make a spark, So I'm ready after getting rid of Mikal Bridges to get rid of Cam Johnson and hit the reset button yet again. I think we have guys like you said, Jalen Wilson, who looked phenomenal. Guys like Noah Clowney, who obviously aren't competing for a position with Cam Johnson, but are guys whose minutes would feed into each other when you're looking at that 3-4 range.
What about Bojan Bogdanovic?
Don't get me started. You know I love Bojan Bogdanovic.
So here's my thing, and I'm 100% agreeing with you, and I'll say this. Cam Johnson at his peak, and the Nets, his peak with the Nets was probably that short period after he was traded in that Philadelphia 76ers series where he was kind of the only guy that showed up in that playoff series for us. Him and Nick Claxton, not Mikal Bridges. But what I'll say about Cam Johnson is you think about some of the small forwards that have been here and the wings over the years. Like, would you take Cam Johnson over Bruce Brown the year that we went to the –
Absolutely not.
That's Bruce what I'm saying.
Brown got a fat contract with the Denver Nuggets, well-deserved, and ended up being a key component of their championship contending teams. Like, Bruce Brown is a guy you want. You want me on this team. You need me on this team. And I'd rather have Bojan Bogdanovic not only just 7 years ago, but today. Yeah. The guy's got all the confidence in the world. Yes, I believe, 37 now? So he's probably got 10 years on Cam Johnson. Here's the thing. They have the same ceiling, right? You might say right now, Cam Johnson is younger, probably has more stamina. You could put him on there for longer. But if you're looking at just hard numbers, Bogdanovic is probably consistently shooting better from 3 coming off the bench than Cam Johnson is. So theoretically, you're going to ask too much of Cam Johnson. He's going to under-deliver. You're going to ask little of Bojan Bogdanovic. He's going to over-deliver, and that's a guy I want to see on my team.
Yeah, and if you had to get me to choose one guy, Dorian Finney-Smith or Cam Johnson, I like Dorian Finney-Smith by a mile. Just because of all the little things he does.
35.
Yeah.
And Cam Johnson's 28. I thought it was 10. That's a 7-year disparity.
No, I'm with you. And I'd like to get more draft picks. If you're Sean Marks, call up the Lakers, call up the Magic, call up the Kings, and just first-round draft picks. Keep it coming. Cam Johnson should at least get one first-round draft pick. At least one. If not one, and maybe a second.
Or Killian Hayes, and we'll be good.
All right. Real quick, I just want to shout out 2 Nets players before we get into anything else. This is just an appreciation segment. Number 1, Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas is ready for the challenge to be the leader on this team. He's ready to take that role on this team with Mikal Bridges gone. He's said as much. How excited are we, Nick, for a season long of the Cam Thomas show?
This is it for Cam Thomas. This is the moment he's been waiting for. This is a couple of years now of him coming in, dropping 30, 40 burgers, us being like, holy shit, and him still getting a backseat to Mikal Bridges and even Cam Johnson in terms of priority with the ball on offense. So to me, this is the ultimate test for Cam Thomas to prove to see if he is an elite player. Is he going to get out there and average over 20 a game for the full season? Can he do that? And can he do the other small things, right? Can he get his rotations on defense?
Time out. I think that he averaged more than 20 a game last season. I think 25 per game would be his goal this season.
How many games did he play last season?
He only missed a few games to injury. Bro, last season he averaged 22.5 points
You're
per
right.
game.
You're right. Started at 51, played 6. Okay, I take that back. You're right. Can he average 25 to 28 points a game? And what I'll say is this, too, to get the fans even more delusionally excited. You're looking at a team where if everyone kind of steps up the way they've been looking, and I'm going to include Jalen Wilson, if he keeps playing at the level we saw him in the summer league, you're looking at a Cam Thomas, Jalen Wilson, Nick Claxton, young group of 3 hungry, talented guys. And if they're all on, that's a tough team. That is a 6th seed in the East to me. You fill in those guys like Dennis Schroeder, like Noah Clowney. What's that face?
You think the Nets are the 6th seed in the East right now?
I'm saying if Cam Thomas, Jalen Wilson live up to the way they've been playing, if they're both averaging 20 points a game.
Yeah, well, okay, time out. Jalen Wilson, and just because he averaged 20 a game in
That's
summer
what I'm
league.
saying. I'm saying I'm thinking so optimistically, like Jalen Wilson is going to make this transition to the NBA and carry over that level of play. You're looking at a team that could be a bunch of young guys who end up making something good. I'm going to bring up the Thunder for the 3rd time, and then I'll never bring them again. Nobody thought SGA, Josh Giddey, and Lou Dort, and of course they just picked up
Jalen Williams.
And Chet Holmgren. Okay, yeah. All of these young guys were going to amount to what? Did they finish 2nd seed in the East, or did they finish 1st?
They were the 1st seed.
No one thought that was going to happen. That took 2 or 3 years. But there is a world in which Killian Hayes, Jalen Wilson, Cam Thomas, Noah Clowney, and Nick Claxton are that team.
The 1 seed in the East?
The 1 seed in the East.
Oh, my God. All right. We literally talked about how not cohesively talented the Nets are like 4 segments ago, and now you're saying at their peak they're going to be a 6th seed. All right, let's keep it moving.
I woke up feeling crazy today. It's way more fun to hope for the best and expect the worst.
Listen. I just want to see exciting basketball. I want to see a lot of dunks. Like, I think about those years that the Nets were horrible, but like Gerald Green was dunking on the entire universe. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see Zaire Williams get as many bodies as possible this season and just dunk on dudes' head. I want to see Jalen Wilson go for at least 230 burgers this year. Like, these are the types of things I'd like to see. And the only other player I really wanted to shout out was Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder has been hooping for Germany in these exhibition games. He's going to be – they almost beat the U.S. He's going to be the guy – I don't know if it's the flag – I think he's going to be the flag bearer for Germany, right? Who lights the torch or whatever.
I think he's the captain too, right?
Yeah, and I'm happy that he's in net. He is a guy who I've said this a few times in this podcast. Like, you want to talk about effort and just trying in a lost season. Nobody gave more effort than Dennis Schroeder in the second half of the season last year. You can't convince me otherwise. When the guy's on the court, he's a difference maker. He makes Claxton better. He's a great passer. He can throw the lob well. He can make some boneheaded plays on offense sometimes, but he's a point guard. He has the ball in his hands a lot. I think that, if we don't see Ben Simmons this year, and again, I don't understand what our plan is with the point guard position. That is the one thing that is extremely murky to me. Now that you pick up Killian Hayes, who the hell are you going to start? You're going to start Schroeder, you're going to start Simmons, and how much time is Killian Hayes going to get? Because you do want to see what you have in that. He's a reclamation project. But I'm just happy that Dennis Schroeder's in net. Like, this is a guy who, no matter where he is, he gives his all. He got in a fight with Kyrie Irving that one time, which I love. And he's a hooper, man. No matter where he is, he's always hooping. So shout out to Dennis Schroeder.
Forget he's not only the captain of the German national team. He won in 2023 their first ever World Cup title, and he was named the FIBA World Cup MVP. So this guy's no joke. And Spen, he's only 30 years old.
That is, wow, in terms of lifespan, that's pretty young. Anyway.
That's younger than you.
That is younger than me. But yeah, man, shout out to Dennis Schroeder. Excited to see him hoop again this year. So, Nick, 2 more segments and then we'll close out. The first one is Nets trivia. And I got a shout out to @NetsMuse for this one. He listed the 3 players in Brooklyn Nets history with the high, and not Brooklyn, it's also New Jersey, with the highest field goal percentage of all time. 3 players. Can you name all 3 of them, if not any?
I'm sorry, the 3 highest field goal percentages in Brooklyn Nets history and New Jersey Nets history?
Both. And
NBA and ABA?
No, just NBA.
Nick Claxton.
Yes, number 1.
It's going to be big men. Kenyon Martin.
No.
Jason Collins.
No. You are on the right path. I mean, Nick Claxton, but like who else? Like think more Claxton type of player. Jason Collins actually wasn't a bad guess. No, not Derek Coleman. I'll give you a hint. We actually met one of these guys.
Josh Boone.
No. Who else have we met? Who did Pops? I mean, I know I met him. I have a picture with him. I think you do too.
Chocolate Thunder?
Yes.
Daryl Dawkins.
R.I.P. Daryl Dawkins. And then there's one other player you're missing.
Is it an obvious one?
It's going to be obvious once you hear it. Who is a player like Nick Claxton?
Kevin Garnett.
Jared Allen. Jared Allen. So it was Nick Claxton with 66.1%. Jared Allen with
Claxton before Claxton was Jared Allen.
61.2%. Jared Allen. Daryl Dawkins, 60.1%. And yes, Nick and I took a picture with Chocolate Thunder when we were children. So anyone who was interested in hearing that story, there's not really a story there.
That was probably before Dariq Whitehead was born.
Yeah, good call. All right, Nick, we're going to end the show sticking with that big men in Nets history narrative. Shout out to Nenad Krstić. Happy birthday.
Wow. I'm surprised I didn't guess him. Nenad Krstić. Happy birthday. Croatian. We love Croatia. We love Nenad Krstić, which also makes me want to give a shout out to Zoran Planinic.
It's not his birthday. I don't know.
Not the greatest net, not really the greatest basketball player, not really a great basketball player, but he was on the Nets briefly, also Croatian. And Spen, before we go, I just want to say, me and my friend Josh Belinsky, who is the owner of Slate Milk, who we shout out a lot, had a long, deep conversation about the greatest basketball movies of all time this past weekend. So I want to open the question up to you, and you can name a couple. What is your favorite basketball movie of all time?
So first off, you didn't give me a chance to say happy birthday to Nenad Krstić. Happy birthday, Nenad. He's 41 years old today. So shout out to him. A little bit older than Dariq Whitehead. My favorite basketball movies of all time. So there are 3 that come to mind. Number 1 is White Man Can't Jump. Easily, in my opinion. It just doesn't get much better than that. Number 2 is The Sixth Man. It stars Marlon Wayans and Kadeem Harrison. Kadeem Harrison is a ghost basketball player in that movie. And then number 3, it's like a tie, I guess, between Like Mike and Blue Chips.
What is Blue Chips?
Blue Chips is a wild movie from the 90s. Nick Nolte's the coach. Shaquille O'Neal's in it. Penny Hardaway's in it. Basically, Nick Nolte's this coach that, he's never really – he's not a corrupt coach. And basically one season, these boosters come to him and they go, we're gonna give you money to pay players illegally, like under the table. And Nick Nolte reluctantly agrees, and that's the movie. And they pay guys like Shaq and Penny Hardaway to come play at his college.
Wow.
It's a really, really good movie. You know what? I'm not going to put that number 3. That would be a number 4, but Like Mike is better. I mean, Calvin Cambridge, it doesn't get much better than him.
I would actually agree with you for the most part. White Man Can't Jump's my number 1. I love Like Mike. I mean, Sixth Man, me and you have such a special place in our heart. I'd say some honorary mentions for me would be Coach Carter.
Okay.
I enjoy Coach Carter a lot. Hustle, the new Adam Sandler movie.
I wouldn't even put that top 3.
Juancho Hernan Gomez. I'm surprised you didn't mention He Got Game.
He Got Game is not as much about basketball.
It's true. But the one I thought you would mention, well, maybe it would slip your mind because it's a comedy, is Semi-Pro, which we both enjoy a lot, which I think is an underrated basketball movie.
I'll tell you what I love about Semi-Pro. There is a lot of basketball in that movie. Like, yes, it's a comedy. Yes, it's Will Ferrell being ridiculous. It's all the funny stuff, but there's still a lot of basketball played, and basketball is the main theme. When, ironically, He Got Game is a serious movie where basketball is probably like 5% of the movie.
And I want to say 2 of those movies you named, Semi-Pro and White Man Can't Jump, star Woody Harrelson.
That's true. Yeah, I knew that. When he, first of all, you know the whole thing with White Man Can't Jump, Woody Harrelson could play basketball.
Yeah.
Wesley Snipes was not really that familiar, and he had to take classes and lessons on how to play basketball so he can look good in scenes with Woody Harrelson.
Billy Hoyle.
Dude, the best scene in that movie. And for all the people who haven't seen the original White Man Can't Jump, maybe you've seen the remake with Jack Harlow. Did you see that?
Never.
Oh,
I will never. The best basketball scene in that movie is when they do the tournament and they're just talking trash to I think it's Flight and Willie. And I just love that entire sequence is Woody Harrelson just talks shit to everyone they're playing. He's talking shit on the sidelines, and oh, it's great. Such a good movie. White Man Can't Jump. I agree.
All right, Nick, any final words for the listeners before we end the show?
Hey, stay true to yourself. Never stop believing. Never say never. Never back down. Step up. He got game. She got game. She's the man. And remember, if it happened to the OKC Thunder, it could happen to us. Hashtag Killian Hayes.
Yeah, and I would just say if you remember anything from this podcast, remember the Titans.
I would agree with that.
Remember the Titans. And I'll say, tough times don't last forever, but tough people do.
And there is a way back.
We're done with the movie references.
Hoosiers.
If you're a Nets fan, take everything Nick and I said today and use that as motivation to root for this team, to wait until we are back atop the East. And as always, fuck the Knicks. All right, we're out.
Peace.